There's a ton of videos on YouTube about gimbal versus handheld. This one's different. I'm not going to tell you which one is better or which one I prefer, because both are equally important. Instead, I'm going to explain the when and why behind gimbal and handheld filming, so that you can make an intentional choice about using the right tool in the right scenario. We'll do a comparison by shooting the same scene with both and explain the motivation behind it. My philosophy towards gimbals is pretty much the same as my philosophy towards slow motion. If you overuse it or use it without motivation, it distracts more than anything. I always opt for natural frame rates first and only use slow motion when properly motivated. But we're not here to talk about frame rates. With handheld, it's exactly the same. I naturally go for handheld first until I can justify a reason for using the gimbal. What are these reasons? I make decisions based on two factors: feeling and camera movement. Camera movement can be broken down into two broad categories: motivated movement and unmotivated movement. Motivated movement is when the camera has a reason to move. Our subject is moving from the door to the couch, and the only way to keep up is to move the camera in a way that she stays in frame. An unmotivated movement is when the camera moves beyond the movement of the subject, and this is either for dynamic effect or to reveal something, like in this case, a pullback shows where the model is going. Any motivated movement that covers a significant distance generally works better on a gimbal, because it takes attention away from the camera moving and focuses more on the movement of the subject. It's important to nail the movement and framing, because if you miss a beat, it immediately becomes a distraction. In this case, I framed the subject, leaving space for her to move in the opposite direction, and only when she settles do we correct more to the rule of thirds. A good example is this sideways tracking shot of the hurdles. The golf cart wasn't able to keep up with the speed of the athlete, so there's only a small window of usable footage, because the moment we fall behind, the attention is on the camera that can't keep up. This shot would be super shaky handheld, and there are isolated cases where it would not be a distraction, but more about that later. If there's any need to track a subject over a distance, a gimbal is a strong consideration. But where does handheld fit in? Handheld works great for motivated movement if the camera doesn't have to move over distance, but rather track an object or movement by tilting or panning. Tracking objects or body movements are much easier to capture handheld, especially on close-ups. These are still considered as motivated movements because the camera has to keep up with what's important in the frame. With unmotivated movement, my choice is largely influenced by the type of project and ultimately feeling. But first, let's focus on the type of project. Consider these two shots, one shot handheld and one on a gimbal. The gimbal one can easily go for a marketing video selling a product. The clean movement has a commercial feel to it. The handheld shot, although the same movement pushing forward, feels completely different and would be much better suited for story-based content, like a short film or documentary. For marketing-based content, I prefer to do most of my unmotivated movements on a gimbal, because it's clean and neutral and doesn't communicate a feeling other than dynamic movement, which can be pleasing to look at. For story-based content, handheld is the winner because it has the ability to communicate emotion with more accuracy, which brings me to the most important factor, feeling. Take this example from a short film I DP'd on with Raylan Joey. In the beginning of the story, we're using a gimbal to track the character as he hears something at the door. We're still not sure who or what it is, so the gimbal shot is neutral and clean, and allows us to track him all the way as he gets closer. What our character sees scares him so much that he immediately looks for a weapon on the floor, and here shooting handheld creates the feeling of tension and angst. The rapid shaky camera enhances the feeling in this moment, something that would have been impossible with a gimbal. In the same way, we established the second character with the gimbal, which makes her come across calm and clinical upon arrival. But when she leaves at the end, she's filled with emotion and regret. Again, the handheld shot is motivated to complement her feelings. Going back to this handheld shot in the kitchen, instead of the normal happy commercial shot, our subject has an emotional response. Bad news perhaps. Either way, the imperfect movement of shooting handheld complements her emotion a lot better than a smooth gimbal shot. What can we learn from this? Shooting handheld has the ability to communicate certain emotions, like tension or uneasiness. It can also give the viewer a more immersive experience, almost as if they're right there in the moment observing. This is a product of camera breathing, or as some will say, the handheld look. Now before I carry on, I want to take a moment to thank the sponsor of this video, Musibed. I've been using Musibed for over 10 years now, which is why I can confidently say that it's the absolute best platform to license music. My main reason would have to be because of the vast amount of unique artists available. Don't you just hate it when a clip starts playing and the first thing that comes to mind is, oh no, not this song again? Everyone always uses this song. With over 1,000 authentic artists, Musibed has over 40,000 high-quality songs to choose from. When I say high quality, I mean the highest level production value out there. From well-known artists to ones you've never heard of. I generally prefer someone saying, wow, who is the artist? The site is incredibly easy to use with amazing curated playlists to get you started. Searching by genre, mood, and various attributes will quickly narrow down your options to a relevant song. But if you still can't find what you need, their team can help with complimentary song searches. Musibed is something that I can wholeheartedly recommend. But don't just take my word for it. Take your projects to the next level with Musibed and hear the difference for yourself and sign up for a free account. Use my code at checkout to receive 1 month free when you purchase an annual subscription. So when choosing to go gimbal or handheld, my decision is based on feeling and movement, but feeling carries more weight and can still trump my reasoning about gimbals. Shooting handheld can create a lot more energy, especially in this context where the workouts feel more intense as we have the rugged and rapid handheld movements. In this shot, instead of a perfect gimbal push forward, I chose a skateboard shooting handheld because the camera shake creates more energy than a perfectly steady gimbal shot. Instead of a steady push with a gimbal up the stairs, I went for a shaky handheld shot because the feeling is intense and complements the energy of that specific film. Yet, in the same film for the opening scene, I used the gimbal. The music hasn't started yet and we're just hearing ambient sound. The gimbal is the perfect choice for the shot. Because of the smooth movement, we're focusing on what's around the corner, where a shaky camera would distract. Once the music drops, majority of the shots in the film are all handheld, some tracking movements and a few unmotivated movements. Yet the moment we get to the hurdles, the gimbal was the only option. Looking at these two factors, I'm playing them against each other, with feeling always being more important. Feeling is dictated by the following: story, emotion, music, and pace. If you want to immerse your audience into a scene, go handheld and let the camera breathe. If you want to create more emotion, handheld will translate easier than a gimbal. Energetic music, fast cuts, handheld is the way. On the flip side, if you want to make sure the camera movement doesn't distract in any way, go for a gimbal, or a slider, or any tool that will allow you to put the focus on the subject movement and less on the camera. Now this all sounds like a lot of thinking, but really only takes a few seconds to figure out when planning your shots. With all this being said, sometimes I don't make my choice based on any of these factors, but only around agility. When time is an issue and you're working with limited resources, going handheld is always the winner, because you can frame your shots much quicker. And capturing a great moment is much better than creating a cool movement. Let me say that again. Moments always trump movement. I've done my fair share of documentary work, and when you're telling a story, capturing the emotion in an authentic moment is much more valuable than a cool movement without any substance behind it. Gimbals can take time to set up and also draw extra attention to yourself. If this resonates with your project, leave the gimbal at home and go for handheld and sacrifice those big tracking shots. If you want bigger movements, at least use something to give you more stability than your feet, like a skateboard or shooting from a car. Gimbals are pretty amazing, and when used in the right context, it has the ability to add a lot of extra production value. If you use it the whole time without any motivation, your edits will become stale over time, but more than anything, it still comes down to the project and your own creative choice, as long as your choice is motivated by reason. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments below and I'll do my best to answer. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.